Thank you, Chairman. Our nation is undergoing a mental health crisis. I'm as concerned about mental health as I am the COVID crisis. This crisis has been exacerbated by shutdowns. Since I've been in Congress 5 years, we've thrown, I suppose, $10 or $20 billion at the problems. We have telemedicine, we have new drugs, more clinics, and I'm not sure we've moved the needle at all. But as a physician, I think getting people to the great outdoors is a better drug than anything I can prescribe. I'm especially concerned about our youth and their mental health crisis. This past week, I got to teach my grandsons how to shoot a BB gun and ride a go-kart and how to clean a pheasant. And I just saw their eyes get this big, right? And it's being in the outdoors, getting them off of these silly things which don't build your brain at all. And what I would ask the panel to do is as you look at this legislation, what would be the emphasis on youth that you could build to get youth exposed to it? It's too long of an answer, but please maybe you could write down a few issues. I want to turn the page to conservation for a second. I've always said farmers and ranchers were the original conservationists. Fishermen and hunters were the next conservationists to the table. And the great thing about hunters and fishermen and women is that we put our money where our mouth is. The Pittman-Robertson Act is an 11% excise tax from sale of shotgun shells and shotguns and guns and fishing poles. Fred, do fishing poles get taxed as well? I can't remember.
It's a different type of program, but same concept. And don't forget archery equipment, which
archery, oh my
got
gosh,
a home base
I'm a big
Kansas.
bow hunter. So all those things, we put our money where our mouth is. I had the pleasure of serving on the Wildlife and Parks Board for 5 years and seeing how that money was used. Like you mentioned, gun ranges being more and more appropriate and out there, habitat. Fred, Vista Outdoors has always been a huge proponent of using that Pittman-Robertson fund. What are some of the great things you've seen done with it?
Yeah, I think to your point about the youth and how do we make this bill what we want it to be, and I think the challenge for all of us is we're making decisions and we're creating an outdoor ecosystem for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And so the decisions that are made today, the policies we're discussing, it's going to make a difference for that generation that's coming up. And in many ways, that's why we're doing it. So that, of course, we just had a huge resurgence of people into the system. But we want to retain those people, but we also want them to motivate and inspire their siblings, their kids, their other people they come into contact with to come try it out as well. And so I think viewing this process through the lens of a decades, not just the next couple months, is really, really important. I think for Vista Outdoor, one of the driving principles of our company is when we do well, we can do good. And during the last 2 years, we've been able to create a new corporate foundation. And we're using our dollars to motivate and activate diverse users of public lands, to get kids off screens and into the outdoors. I mentioned the National Forest Foundation partnership. There's just so much we can do to take the business success we've had and to give it back so that we can inspire and motivate the next generation.
Thank you so much. I want to talk about shortages for a second. I went back to a family wedding this weekend, and I hadn't seen my uncle in over a year. This is my uncle who used to take me hunting and fishing. He said, "Roger," I said, "Oh boy, I can't get any primers." He reloads shotgun shells. He's kind of a semi-pro shooter. There's a issue in the family. Who's the better shot, him or me, my brother, my dad? And of course, we know, but he's out of primers. He can't get primers. The shotgun shells that I bought last year for $13 a box are now $25 a box. You cannot find 5 or 6 magnums for a pheasant load. I could find a few 8. And this is Walmart, a store that has access to everything. Typically, we can buy it by the case, and I couldn't find any pheasant load this year. What's causing the shortages?
Yes, sir. So there's a couple of factors at play. One, it's the new users that have entered the shooting sports. So during the last 2 years, there's been 13 million new first-time participants in the shooting sports. And that's a significant number. And one of the things we've noticed is those new users, they're more diverse. 40% of those users are women and people of color. They're more active. So the past trends of purchasing to stockpile have gone out the door. People are purchasing to consume. And you've seen things like hunting really rise in popularity. It's social distanced. People have had more free time. The field-to-table movement is real, driven by popular culture like the Meat Eater podcast and his Netflix show. There's also been a major change in the market in that for much of the 2020 surge, one of the biggest ammunition producers, Remington, was on the sidelines. They had gone through a bankruptcy and they weren't producing in 2020.
Why?
They had gone through bankruptcy. They had mismanagement and other factors. But our company actually acquired that company, that ammunition facility, out of bankruptcy in October of 2020, and we have been ramping up production at that facility. We've more than doubled employment. We've done 72,000 hours of worker training. We're standing up a supply chain. And so, the equivalent is to have Charmin not producing toilet paper during the early surges of COVID. That's the same analogy. And so now that this facility is back up and running again, we think we're doing our part to get more supply to meet the demand.
When can I tell my uncle to have his primers? Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll yield
time is
back.
expired.
Ms. Turner, I wanted to follow up on something you mentioned. We had a hearing about a month ago on overcrowding in the National